events, put them into context, those matters of national importance. My name is Simapolo. Welcome once again. It's a good sunny Saturday morning, the first week of December, and we are concluding a very, very eventful week. A week that started off with comical events of insanity on the Uganda Airlines, and then we had very serious events in the week. We can talk about the World AIDS Day that is marked every first day of December, and then we also had the International Day of Peoples with Disabilities. All those events were commemorated in a very, very scientific manner. And of course, there are very many events that that transpired through the week. Issues to do with the deployment, the UPDF deployment in the Democratic Republic of Congo. On the 30th of November, we woke up to news of army deployment, Uganda army deployment in the DRC to pursue the Allied Democratic Force rebels in Eastern Congo. And that will be our main topic for discussion this morning. Questions are rising on what actually, whether actually this deployment was timely, and the circumstances surrounding the deployment, especially around the legality of how the army, the national army can be deployed. All those issues will be trying to put them into context. And again, we can also talk briefly about the media reports that came out through the week, alleging that there could be a potential takeover of key government assets, including Entebbe International Airport, by the government of China, arising from a loan that we procured from Exim Bank of China, amounting to $200 million, meant for facilitating the expansion of our international airport. It was a parliamentary committee that handled that matter, and the Attorney General came out to confirm and clarify that the contracts are clear, and Ugandans should not be worried about such a move. And even the Chinese embassy in Uganda issued a statement confirming and affirming that that's not true. And from that particular statement, the Chinese embassy spokesperson says that the loan alluded to is guaranteed by Uganda's sovereign credit, not anything else, and that no single project in Africa has been taken over by the Chinese government over failure to pay loans. China says that the claims are false and intended to distort the good relations China enjoys with developing countries, including Uganda. But of course, it is a matter, a very contentious matter around in public discourse, and that's another topic we will try to another issue we'll try to interrogate in this program. My name is Simapolo. Once again, welcome to the program, and I've been joined by Dr. Werihe Wanzara Gerard. He is the head of civic engagement and research at Africa Leadership Institute, an NGO that oversees performance of parliament and many other issues to do with the governance. Welcome to the program once again, Doctor.
Thank you very much to Sime. It is always a pleasure being on Salt TV, and good morning, viewers. Actually, I'm very happy to come here to discuss, because part of the mandate of the African Leadership Institute is peace and security. And we have done a lot of work. Previously, we facilitated the peace talks between the government and the LRA in Juba. We also have supported IGAD in de-radicalization of the young people in the Great Lakes region. We are also worked with UPDF to support disarmament by involving the citizens themselves to mobilize people to hand over guns, and supporting other peripheral communities in Turkana and so forth.
Wow.
So we love what we do, and it's good we are having this discussion this morning.
Well, welcome, Dr. Gerard. And I must tell our viewers that shortly we'll be joined by Honorable Medad Segona Rubega, and he is the Member of Parliament representing Busiro East in the 11th Parliament, and he is the chairperson of the Parliamentary Accounts Committee. I think we'll be connecting with him anytime from now. But I started off on a comical note in Senene on Ugandan Airlines. I don't know if it caught your attention. And
yeah, of course, Mr. Tusime, I think in Uganda sometimes we take things so casually. International public air transport, public air transport is regulated by International Air Transport Agency, IATA. And then it's just similar the way the International Maritime Organization regulates the water transport. Now, for you to put any delicacy on international flight, it must be approved by certain authorities.
True.
You don't just, for instance, if you said anything that is delicious in your village can be put on the airplane, then Congolese would just, because they enjoy monkeys, they would put monkey meat in the international airline.
Yeah.
Or China, where everything is eaten, you would find it on the airlines.
Yeah.
But this is not the case. So I think I appreciate General Katumba Wamala and others who have taken responsibility to take on these people, because our airline is new.
Yeah, true.
It needs to build that image over time. So if you haven't sent any vendor on the corridors of the airline and behaving like he's in Chikubo, honestly, it brings down the value.
Yeah.
It even, you know, negative news move faster than positive news. Yes.
Well, the airline management came out and said it was bad, but it was an eye-opener, and they are actually considering adopting Insanity on the in-flight menu. And like you said, we cannot have every other delicacy that we think is.
Yes, if you go to Lamo,
airline.
I went to Lamo, I find it's normal every day. They are selling big rats or in the market, and people are buying. You know, that's a delicacy in Lamo district. If you go to some areas, people are enjoying white ants. You go to my Vugisu, Malewa, I will enjoy it. It's
actually, I saw comments, I mean, though they were more like jokes, and people saying, let's also have our Malewa on our airline, others saying,
and I think Malewa
we should also push to have it on the airline.
And I think Malewa is okay because it's a plant. Basically, it's eaten in Vietnam, in China. Only that for them, they make it, they harvest it when it's green and young. Just chop and fry and eat. But in Vugisu, there is value addition before cooking. They first smoke it, it turns brown before they cook it.
But I think what you said is very important. There are international regulations that must be followed.
Yes.
If you are handling or managing an international enterprise like an international airline.
That is very true.
You can reaffirm it and then we move.
I can reaffirm it. We need to follow the international regulations if we want our airline to pick up. And honestly, I couldn't take the excuse of an oversight and being an eye-opener. By the time someone crosses with insanity into the cabin and then begins selling even for 10 minutes, because I saw one of the photos, an air hostess is even standing as if she's supervising. So I think it's laxity or lack of leadership or responsibility. So people can be cautioned, but going forward, people should follow the rules.
Well, according to police, the culprits have been charged with several counts, including something to do with disrupting a normal arrangement of an airline, and we hope it goes. I mean, it is handled in a better way, and we hope our image was not in any way affected. Let's move on. And another comment, Doctor. We received the news again, I think it was last week, about the new variant of COVID-19 that emerged in South Africa, the Omicron, and reports were like, this is very, very dangerous. It is much more transmissible and dangerous. And this week, the Minister of Health tabled a statement in Parliament, alluding to measures that have been put in place at entry points across the country, across our borders. And from your understanding, do you think we have put in place appropriate measures to counter such an occurrence, if it is really deadly and highly transmissible?
I think government has tried, especially with the airport. As opposed, if you look at last year when we first had the first cases of COVID, the situation at the Entebbe airport has much improved. However, we have some risks on the ground, for instance, borders like Malaba and so forth. I have informally received the reports that there is a lot of corruption at the entry points, land entry points. Then others like Luakaka, where I come from, buses just keep entering, and honestly you don't see any testing taking place or anything like that. So it is possible someone can come with it to Nairobi and someone can cross with it by road. So I don't believe, because as I speak, I don't think we have more stringent conditions like the US, France and so forth, but it has moved. It is in Nigeria, it's in France, it's in the US, they got a case. So meaning California. It has, exactly, meaning it has already moved. But again, the first news was very troublesome. They said it is very strong and evades the current vaccines. But again, latest an article was written by the same doctor saying that well, it's not as terrible as Delta, which killed a lot of people in India. So I believe that Ugandans should go and be immunized in large numbers like they are doing. Unfortunately, the numbers seem to be reducing, and yet vaccines are there. But that is the best way for us to do, because at the first we were crying, no vaccine, no vaccine, no vaccine. Now the vaccines are there. Let people get immunized. Let people not go into these stereotypes. Who says, Ugandans are funny? So people said we shall not produce. When who told you? These vaccines are being administered all over the world. So I encourage Ugandans to do that, so that we can protect ourselves and we go back to work. Honestly, the situation is terrible.
But anyway, misinformation or distortion of information comes from all sides, because in the beginning, like you said, reports were that this particular variant is very much,
actually they say,
one deadly.
Yes.
But again, there came that assertion that it actually overrides the vaccines available. I mean, even if you have taken, actually the case in California, in the US, I saw that address by Dr. Fauci. The case was of a person who had taken 2 jabs. The case in the US. Then I think also that also undermines the cuts into the vaccine hesitancy. It's also
Mr. Poltusima, you're right. But what people need to know, none of these vaccines can give you 100% protection. For instance, the highest we have seen is Pfizer from the US, which can protect you up to 98%. But like AstraZeneca that I took, up to 60, maybe 66%. Then others are 70 something. So still there is a gap. But the science behind the vaccine is that if you have taken it, it will prevent maybe extreme illness and hospitalization and maybe death. Society hospitals are freed and we don't have so many people in the hospital, so many people dying. So it is a way of boosting your immunity to be able to fight even if you get it. So even if you got all the 2 doses, you can still test positive of COVID, but you may not be as ill as maybe a person who was found weak and did not have a vaccine.
I think it is good news. We are getting that, that there are no, I mean, we are not receiving news of high number of casualties due to this new variant. I think that is good news. And even the case that was reported in the US had mild symptoms. Maybe it could be because he had taken the 2 doses of the vaccine. I don't know. But
and actually they are saying Omicron does not show like serious symptoms like coughing. It is more mild. That's why the fear was that if it is mild, it may evade detection. And so they say it's even hard to just detect it maybe by nose scooping or something like that. So that was the worry.
Well, I think the bottom line is that we should go and get vaccinated. That's the best way probably we could we could acquire protection from such a new variants and all those that have been existing. Doctor, let's go straight to the issue of a potential takeover of key government assets by China. A case of Entebbe International Airport. Like I said, the Chinese embassy came out strongly refuting the claims and saying that this is up to individuals who want to distort the good relations China has enjoyed with African developing countries. What do you make of that the whole thing? Because after the clarification from the Attorney General and all that.
Now, maybe for the benefit of viewers, let me inform the viewers that China currently is the biggest investor around the world, because the capital, they have the capital, the money. The system they run is centralized and the government has money. So when they take decisions under these bilateral agreements and supporting projects, they execute them faster. As opposed to the US, for instance. I remember President Obama launched the Power Africa, where he wanted solar, wind to light Africa. But the progress has been very small. Why? Because he has to call Bloomberg, he has to call the billionaires in the US so they can fund those initiatives through investment. But some of them look at investment in Africa as being risky. So many individuals are not willing to put a lot of money here. So that's why many states are reaching out to China. If you go to just near the USA, the Panama Canal, it was expanded by China just in the backyard of the US. China is developing the Trans-American Railway from the Pacific to the Atlantic. So, and the mode of financing is very similar. Loans, and then the agreements like escrow accounts where the money is kept and paid to the creditor until the debt is settled. Now, for the case of Uganda, did we need the improvement of the airport? Definitely we wanted.
Yeah, true.
There is a time I landed at the airport early morning with the Qatar Airways, and there was no light at the runway, as if you are entering, a bush. It was so dark. The runway is small; it cannot even accommodate bigger airlines. Now, if we are even ourselves investing in bigger airlines, and the Entebbe is actually it's a fastest growing transmission place where people can come, stop, and transit routes. Yes, so if it's growing, we needed the expansion of the airport. But now the questions we need to ask ourselves: one, when we borrowed this money, is it doing what it's supposed to do? If we can block those leakages and we are able to build good infrastructure worth of accommodating international airlines, then that is okay. But I have followed the debate on this date, Uganda-China date. What I found is that the agreement involved establishing an escrow account where revenue collected is remitted to the creditor until the loan is repaid. But what I have heard or have read is that I think on our side there may have been some violations of the agreement, whereby maybe the remittance is not being made, and of course the project is still ongoing. So it creates that kind of distrust between the parties in the agreement.
But from the Attorney General's submissions, he says we still even have a grace period, and then a repayment period also is still at large. So maybe there is something that has not been well addressed before we delved into these discussions. Maybe what we can challenge government is these days people are doing open government, because such an agreement is not a matter of national security. I know the airport is a strategic asset which touches national security, but I mean the agreements, financing agreements, because I don't think Uganda is very poor that it can fail to pay $200 million a debt, because I've seen Uganda spending a lot of money, or even borrowing on party, meaning we are still credit worth, or we can raise that money and pay. But I think to rule out any doubt, it would be proper if these agreements were made public. This particular one. But don't you think the concerns, you say that probably we are still, Uganda can pay the debt? Yes, of course it can. And from what I also saw, the debt will be repaid from the incomes that the airport gets.
Yes, which income doesn't go to the accounts of the Civil Aviation Authority. It goes to another account.
I think the concerns arise just because we have borrowed a lot. We have borrowed much more from either the same bank. Actually, Exim is funding almost
every major
project in this country. Maybe that's where the concerns arise, that we have borrowed here and there, and then this $200 million, though it looks to be not so big, but we have already a lot on our table.
Yeah, definitely it has become a matter of national concern, and I've seen Minister Kasaija admitting that probably we need to begin slowing down on our borrowing, because we are going far away the threshold. And even at a personal level, if you borrow more than what you can manage, your income is say 200,000 a month, and then you go to the bank, you are borrowing 50 million. The ability for you to pay becomes very, very low. So we need to control our borrowing. I heard government cabinet had made a resolution to borrow only for infrastructure, but other things ignore. But we have seen where lobbyists go and other loans are approved, which are not for infrastructure.
Borrowing to buy vehicles for former government officials from the supplementary budget that was passed, I think, 2 weeks ago.
Yes, the 3.8 trillion.
Yes, to pay to buy vehicles for ministers and former government officials, and we will be borrowing part of that money.
So that's the challenge, because if we have taken a decision as cabinet that we are going to borrow for only key infrastructure projects in order to begin, because if you look at our annual budget right now, I think interest payment on loans is coming number 2.
Yeah, true.
Number 2. It means interest payment is competing with resources that would channel to health, that is dangerous.
It is dangerous.
Yes.
Well, I think it's time we cross over and connect with the Honorable Medad Rubega Seguna. If he's there, we need to speak to him and introduce the topic to him. If he has not been following. Honorable Medad Rubega Seguna, you are welcome to the dialogue, and we are discussing matters of accountability and matters of governance. We started with the issue of potential takeover over key government assets, including the Entebbe International Airport, as has been discussed in Kosase this week. And we need to pick your comment on that before we go to the issue of Uganda Army deployment in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Welcome to the program. Speak to our viewers first. Honorable Medad Segona.
Thank you very much, and good morning to you as well as our viewers out there. Well, it's an interesting topic you're discussing. I don't know why you want my comments. First of all, we have been advised by government that everything is okay, that there is no potential takeover of our airport by the Chinese, and that everything that has been going around is baseless rumor. I want to take it at face value and say, well, thank you for clarifying. Although this is not a government to trust, that they tell you this has not happened and it has not happened. These are not people you will trust. Go to your bed and sleep saying, oh well, we have received assurance. But we also received a document from the Chinese embassy renouncing the speculation. That gives me some bit of comfort that maybe it has not happened. It does not mean it will not or may not happen. It may happen if we are not conscious. I think the best thing we can do as nationals is to put ourselves on guard and put our government on tenterhooks so that they honor their obligations. When you borrow, you must pay. I think the airport is a strategic infrastructure that we needed, or that we need as a country. However, strategic means that you must have a strategy. If the plan was that we expand the airport so as to expand and increase the traffic at the airport and therefore bring in more money, then it is something that we must all come out to support. That must be based on specific projections, where you're talking about, say, if we are receiving 10 aircrafts a day, and you tell me that yes, with this expansion we are able to receive 50 aircrafts, and therefore multiply our income at the airport by, multiply it by 50 times. Then you go to the projections in terms of expenditure and say, well, we are going to spend this much, but with these collections we are able to pay this money in such and such a period of time without encumbering on the other national resources. Then it makes sense. However, on the other hand, if you're going to expand it simply for prestige and say, well, in our 40 years of maladministration, at least we've been able to register this, and you show it to me as your achievement when it has no corresponding income, then it is senseless. It does not make sense to engage in such an astronomical expenditure with humongous obligations and you're not able to honor. The other thing is about, I think they've talked about our ability to pay. Certainly Uganda has the ability to pay that money if only we rechanneled our priorities and reorganized ourselves. If you look at how much money is stolen and swindled in various projects, and you closed those gaps, you're able to pay that money without encumbering the taxpayer any further. If you looked at how we are managing our resources as a country, how we are managing our taxes collected, then we would be able to pay that money, and I believe with ease. The potential or prospects of the Chinese taking over any establishment funded with their loan in an African country, especially mismanaged economy like ours, it is not a far-fetched speculation. It is very possible because there are so many things that we have done and failed to do, and the reason is because we do not make the projections right, we politicize the initiatives, and in the end we make losses. Look at Ntandikwa of the late Honorable Chisamba Mugerwa, may his soul rest in eternal peace. Look at this Myoga program that we are talking about, and so many other initiatives that the government has been putting across. They have failed because we do not make our projections right. They are not based on proper economic evaluation. So I think expansion of the airport, expansion of the road network, to me is not the issue. But you must start with those establishments that you believe are going to pull and push the economy. So the Chinese can do it. Finally, on this is the way we design our agreements. I have studied some bit of international agreements, so I know a thing or two, both at undergraduate and postgraduate. And I know the importance of what we call confidentiality clauses. But the confidentiality clause is only benefiting the person who gives the money and who does not want certain things to be disclosed. For example, that if an agreement is drafted like this one, and there are so many lawyers in this country who will look at it, patch up holes in the agreement, the Chinese or whoever is providing the financing thinks at the next level of negotiation, in the next wave of negotiations, he will not have his way out, his way, because citizens would scrutinize the document and say, this one is missing, that one is missing, etc. One of these days we've been reviewing some agreements where the government agrees with an investor to make certain installations. They do not make provision for land. Now the investor makes provision for land and is part of his profit. Now at the end of the project, the investor says, look, I bought this land, you did not give me the money for it. So for you to take over, you must pay me. You know, and you find that the loophole is that they never discussed it, and the government people were probably sleeping on job. So I think the way we design our agreements needs to be reoriented so that Ugandans are able to access quite a number, as long as they do not prejudice national security. I think somebody was talking about national security. For example, what do we lose if we accessed the agreement?
Honorable Segona, yes. Well, talking about this particular agreement, is it that agreement that that cannot be accessed by, especially like you legislators, and brought out for scrutiny? Is it so sensitive?
I do not see the sensitivity that would require keeping it under lock and key. One, because it has no bearing on national security. For example, if the Chinese are lending their money transparently at good interest rates, and the terms are not unconscionable, why would they worry about people accessing them? The beauty, again through ingenuity at Parliament, is that we have finally agreed that those agreements will be placed before in the parliamentary library. They will be accessed by members of Parliament, but the compromise was that we would not make copies of the same. You read to acquaint yourself. Now the trouble is that somebody expects you to read an agreement of say 200 pages and keep the whole of it in your head, so that when you are debating you are able to discuss it and say this clause requires Uganda to do ABCD. It doesn't make much sense, but I think yes, it is progress that you can say we can build on. There are agreements, for example, for sale of arms and ammunition. We are not asking for them. We are talking about. We are not talking about the plan of the airport, where there is some strategic corner, because this is both military and civil. So there are certain things that we may probably not be at liberty to discuss if they came to our attention or knowledge. But we are talking about an establishment where we're talking about money, payment terms, etc. Some people have been saying that our drafters or our representatives at the drafting table could probably get what we have Gandanized as Kintu Chidogo, something small, then I can let this clause pass. I do not want to be tempted to get into that maybe they are paid. I also do not want to get into the thinking that it's a level of incompetence, because I think these are competent men and women. The one thing we must accept is that poverty has led us to these levels, that we can accept anything, however unconscionable. Now, for those unconscionable clauses that we take out of poverty, should be a lesson to us as to why we are poor. We are poor because we are mismanaging our economy. We are poor because we are mismanaging the country. So we must deal with the issue of governance, and that encompasses corruption, which starts at the top. You know, when they tell you, for example, if they told you I was in State House last night quietly, that would be a vote of no confidence, and everybody would say, even Segona. You know, and yet, as a member of parliament, as a chairman of a committee, I mean, there would ordinarily be nothing wrong with meeting the president. But anyone who meets the president, especially from our side, say he has gone for an envelope. True or not, it tells a lot. It tells a lot in the sense that it's a vote of no confidence, that people look at State House as a clearinghouse for conmen. When you meet a minister, and someone finds you in some meeting in some corner, they say, maybe that one is about to cross. That one was receiving something. So we need to deal with corruption, both in terms of perceived and or actual. If we manage to do that, we will extricate ourselves out of this quagmire by paying the loans.
Thank you.
And at some point, maybe we'll be lending. Why should we lend the Chinese?
Thank you so much, Honorable. We are actually we are at a race against time, because you told us, and we are aware that you gave us only the first hour, and we only have a few minutes, and you cannot go away without discussing or giving your view on the army deployment in the DRC. But as we conclude on this, Honorable, I request you that in just 1 minute or two, I come back to the studio and ask Dr. Wirihe from Africa Leadership Institute to make a comment against the Chinese embassy spokesman, who said China has never taken over any project in Africa. We received reports, I think a few years ago, of about Zambia airport, an airport in Zambia, and some other establishments, projects in Zambia that were taken over by China. Did you follow up on that matter, and can you agree with the Chinese spokesperson, the Chinese embassy spokesperson?
Well, it is not true that China has never taken over any assets. In Zambia, yes, I need to verify. But there are other good examples. In Greece, they took a harbor. And then in Sri Lanka, they took a very strategic port. So there is evidence that some assets have been taken in some countries. But we are not sure whether the agreements in that were similar, but they have ever done it. Okay. And they end up running the seaport for over 40 years, when the host country is not getting anything. So the risk is there, and that's why now I need to go back to Honorable Medal Segona for a quick final comment on this matter, because even the Attorney General, Counsel Chiwanu Kachiliwa, said the consequences. Yes, the consequences if Uganda fails to meet the contractual obligations are real. That there are consequences. Finally, your final comment on this issue, Honorable Segona.
Any borrowing has attendant risks. Even when you get your house and mortgage it in a bank and fail to pay, the consequences are clear, that the property will be realized and foreclosed. Foreclosure here means they sell it to recover their money. So I think our emphasis should be on government managing the project properly, first of all. Secondly, always negotiating to the best of their abilities. Some of us are even available at no fee. If you're negotiating something and you consulted me and said, how could we handle this? I could add a comment or two. So I think the risks are real when you mismanage the project, when you mismanage the economy, when you default on the obligations. And here I agree with the Honorable Attorney General that yes, we must pay. So failure to pay, the consequences are real. And two, we should not blame government for borrowing to do projects. We can only blame government, one, for mismanaging the economy, therefore taking us to the level of borrowing every time. Just a couple of months ago, about 2 months ago, the government borrowed money to pay salaries for workers. I mean, we have gone to that level. Somebody was telling me, and I thought it was a joke, that when you see so many traffic officers on the road, you know, imposing humongous fines, you know the government is broke, they are looking for money. So we should not descend to those levels, and that's the only angle from which we can blame government. But not borrowing because they don't have money. Two, not expanding because we need the economy to expand the infrastructure. And thirdly, to tell them when you are borrowing, please, one, have national interest in accordance with Article 8A of the Constitution. Number two, I mean, don't sleep on job.
Honorable, and what an interesting topic we are going to leave behind just because of time, and we need to move on and hope that we will be able to pay back this loan to avoid those consequences. And I will not let you go as for now, Honorable Medal Sugona. Let's cross directly to our issue and topic about the army deployment in the DRC. And the questions have been around the legality, and some were talking about authorization from Parliament, and we'll start from there. Do you agree that there should be authorization from Parliament on such a, on such a very, very sensitive and a matter that requires time, precision and time precision?
Well, whether I agree or not, it's a constitutional requirement. We have a constitution that was drafted by conscious men and women, guided by national interest and transparency. The army belongs to the people of Uganda because that is what the constitution provides. It doesn't belong to an individual or to a group or a cluster of individuals in the country. So that is the basis upon which, and this is not only in Uganda, it cuts across the entire globe to require. I think there is a dichotomy that we need first of all to dissect and understand. On the one hand, security is a very sensitive sector, that when you want to go and attack, I believe if they are attacking ADF, I hope they are attacking ADF, and which exists in real terms. If that is the case, one would imagine that yes, if you're going to attack, then you come to Parliament, seek authorization, and therefore start the firing. By the time you finish the parliamentary debate, the rebel has shifted base, and it is it is very expensive to trace and track them, especially in a country as expansive as DRC. Number two is that it is also difficult. Sometimes you may not trace them. So that is the first leg. But on the other is the issue of our constitution. Our constitution requires and directs that before you deploy out of the country, our forces outside Uganda, you must not only inform but seek authorization. History has shown that you have never asked for this and failed to get it from Parliament, because we are sensible men and women. When you come to us in accordance with the Constitution and you show us the threats, as we believe the threats are real, then we would authorize. Even those conscientious objectors would object, but still if majority would agree with you, you would go and attack the rebels and come back and tell us, yes, and give us accountability. But the government chooses not to do that. Remember the deployment in Somalia, they never sought authorization from Parliament, even when there was no strategic security threat that you would think of that, oh, if we alert them, then they will disappear. No, it was not the case, because we are still there many years, I think 10 years plus, we are there. So I think to strike a balance, if I were these people, by the time I come to notify Parliament, I would already have placed my missiles wherever I want to place them, especially in within the country. But even if it meant secretly outside the borders, quietly, I mean, let me sound as mischievous as I know they are, then I would deploy quietly, but before I fire the first bullet, then I would have to seek authorization. Because suppose Parliament wouldn't know that you have deployed. When you fire the first bullet, we would know. So I think let's not set a precedent that, you know, there are certain circumstances or situations where you can do away with the Constitution. Then in other cases, you can enforce the Constitution against others who are perceived to have violated the same. The only reason Mr. Museveni can deploy and fire at those he calls rebels, I hope they are, is because, I mean, he's the president. And he's the president because the Constitution exists and gives him those powers. Otherwise, if he violates the Constitution, then he has no moral authority, no moral right to enforce the Constitution against those who are seeking to remove him. He gives them legitimacy or puts himself on the same balancing scale with them in terms of illegality and illegitimacy. So the Constitution must be observed, must be enforced, and must be respected at all times and under all circumstances.
Honorable, I think this will be your final submission, considering the fact that you gave us only a few minutes in this hour. And what can we do now? Is it now a matter that now maybe would require a constitutional amendment? I don't know. I don't know what we could do, because as you say, to strike a balance between, I mean, this sensitive military operation that requires precision, then you need to move where you need to move very fast and then report to Parliament. Is that provision that requires us, that requires the Commander-in-Chief to report to Parliament later, isn't it enough really? Or we need to do something much more than that?
You man, are you serious? That you can give Museveni another blank check? All the blank checks that we have given him in the past have been abused. He has put in more than the amount agreed. Now you want to give him another one? No, it is not necessary. Even other countries do it. You know, when you're deploying, you seek authorization. These are our children. Museveni has no children in the battlefront. You see, I mean, even if he had those children and he wanted to put them, and they're wearing our uniform, we have a responsibility over them. We have a duty over them. We owe them a duty of protection, etc. They are using our money. No, do not amend the Constitution. Comply with it. So whenever you find that, oh, here the Constitution is not giving me convenience, you want to amend it. How many times are you going to amend it? In the end, Museveni is going to remove the Constitution and it becomes the Constitution. Because he believes whatever he thinks is right, and that is the national interest. No, you can still do it. The Americans have done it, etc. All you need to do is not to be mechanical. Just be scientific. Yesterday I had him talking about scientific that you can sit at your computer.
They didn't do it in 2007 while deploying in Somalia, I think. I hope that's the year. And now they've again repeated the same thing. Now, does it still make sense? And what are you going to do as Parliament? What do you think Parliament should do? Or according to the Speaker, they will be coming to report to Parliament next week on Tuesday. But now, like you say, the law has been flouted from the beginning, and not once, not twice. Just in 2 minutes.
The speaker has done her duty, or by summoning them to come and explain. Did you expect her to go and arrest Museveni? No. I mean, it's criminality, it's illegality, but we are not going to close Parliament. We're not going to close the executive, or even to lock up the army, because that will be risking the country. Now that they have done it, now that they have not been sensible enough to follow the law, ours is to tell them, come back, be humble, apologize to the country, undertake not to do it again, give us a status report. We don't know how many of our soldiers have died. Somebody was telling me yesterday we have lost 200. I am not sure. I mean, we can only speculate. If you do not give us information, people will be at liberty to speculate and tell you 5,000 have died, and when you seek to deploy others, they will fear to go there. And that is very, very dangerous. But how many people, I mean, apart from firing in the air, you know, Museveni loves the firing in the air to scare everyone. You see how he has been deploying Mamba whenever there is a civil demonstration, shooting, and he wants to demonstrate that, oh, by the way, I can be a horrendous killer, so that you fear him. And somebody was telling me he can compromise on anything but not security. I said it's not security. It's about compromising on personal survival. And even if I were him, I would not compromise on anything that has to do with my personal survival. So it's about Museveni's survival. But let's work. I mean, even if a government is as criminal as Museveni is, even if a man is as bad as Museveni, in matters of national survival, you've got to walk alongside him. So because he's the one holding our guns, and he's one perhaps carrying our antenna, as he says, the man with our vision, he's telling us that we have a threat. We can only give him the benefit of doubt and tell him to, this time round, to be honest, but not to say that we will not support efforts towards securing the borders and securing our people and their property. No, when it comes to, you know, protecting our people, I think we all have to work together, including working with the criminals. When Museveni was going to the bush, he went with rapists, he went with highway robbers, and of course they helped him. You know how many banks they robbed to give
Honorable, our time
for the rebellion.
Our time is running out. I'm told your final
I thought it was my time
on whether you this time whether this time you have hope that we will not get problems that we got that time when we went to Congo. Do you think this time we have learned lessons? Just in
you
one
mean
second.
like stealing gold and timber? I am not very sure, because we still have the same players who stole the gold and timber, plundered DRC. I had one general friend of mine saying he only stole a stick, which turned out to be a big log from which they would get lots and lots of timber. I hope they do not steal. And you know, the most disturbing thing is that they stole for themselves, and the country is bleeding with the debt of trillions of shillings that we are paying in reparation. I'm also happy this time that they sought authorization from DRC, because it is the way to go, working together. I am very, very dismayed, very angered that they decided to overlook Parliament. You know, Museveni is a loner. I think he was brought up as a loner, and even in his administration he chooses to be a loner. He doesn't want to work with other leaders, and that's very despicable. With all that said, I think I can only say,
thank you so much, Honorable. Our time is far spent.
May God bless you.
Thank you so much for your time, Honorable Medad Lubega Segona, Senior Legislator in the 11th Parliament, and a chairperson of the Parliamentary Accounts Committee. We are really, it's really sad that, and unfortunate that we are cutting you on short on that final note. And viewers, we must go for a break. When we return, we have Dr. Jeda Duerihe Wanzara from Africa Leadership Institute. Honorable Med Segona told us he has another sensitive engagement in the next hour. He may not be with us, but thank you for your time, Honorable. Let's go for a short break. The dialogue will be coming up in a while.
Television, Femunyo.
Welcome from the break. The program is The Dialogue. My name is Simapolo, and we have in the studios Dr. Gerard Werihe Wanzara. He is the head of research and civic engagement in Africa Leadership Institute, an NGO that looks at very many issues, the performance of parliament, issues to do with governance, issues with the economy and all that. And in the first segment we had a good time with Honorable Medard Lubega Segona, the Member of Parliament for Busiro East. And well, I think that's where we should start from.
Yes.
From the submissions we got from Honorable Medard Segona. It's unfortunate he is not going to join us this time round in the second hour. Yeah. What did you pick especially? I don't know. I will not limit you if you want to go back and say anything on the other topic, but from the deployment and that I don't want it. I want to call it claimer from Parliament to have the Commander-in-Chief seek authorization before deploying UPDF outside our borders.
Apple, I think Honorable Segona submitted well. For instance, I loved his willingness to say that if they sought their resource, they would actually do it for free to support government in these negotiations and things like that. And also to acknowledge that issues of security are very sensitive, and so they cannot give them a blank check to discuss the deployments and so forth, because by the time they finish, the enemy has probably fled and changed the position. But back to this issue of deployment of troops in the DRC, I looked at the two laws when this issue was being discussed in Parliament. One, the Constitution, and this took me to the role of Parliament as the representatives of the people of Uganda. And then I also looked at the UPDF Act. Now the UPDF Act under section 39 says the president can deploy troops outside the country for peacekeeping, or peace enforcement. And then the Act defines peace enforcement and peacekeeping within the framework of the United Nations Charter, Article 6 and Article 7. Now, with peacekeeping, it means you have taken troops, but the principles are, one, that the peacekeeping force is agreed upon by a number of parties, and then the rules are that there should be consent among the parties within the conflict, and maybe you are enforcing either ceasefire or cessation of hostilities agreement, and then also there should be no confrontation by the force. They can only fight in self-defense. And then also, of course, non-partisanship. Non-partisanship is another principle. Whereas enforcement, you have the authority to actually push. You can fight the parties. It doesn't need the consent of the parties in the conflict. But then the law says that in the event that when the president is doing that, he must seek approval from Parliament. But in the event that it has happened when the Parliament is is on recess, then the Speaker shall call a Parliament and then ratify this within 21 days. Now, if we ask ourselves, have the 21 days passed? No. Is it a peacekeeping or peace enforcement?
Exactly.
I think it is a peace enforcement.
This one?
This one. It's not a peacekeeping.
It's not. It's not a peacekeeping mission.
It's not a peacekeeping mission. It is a peace enforcement
operation.
But also under Section 40, it says under Section 40, it says the president can deploy troops under a bilateral or multilateral agreement.
Which is the case.
Which is the case. This is Congo and Uganda. But in that case, it also puts the responsibility on the Minister of Defense to come up with an agreement. They call it the status of troops agreement, which agreement now becomes a tool of accountability.
Isn't it the MOU they signed? UPDF leadership signed?
Yes, exactly. It can be called an MOU, but what matters are the clauses within that agreement. But now, does Parliament have authority to approve or to ratify? Yes. If we go back to the functions of Parliament, one of the key functions in the law is oversight. Oversight means you check the actions of other states of government, the executive. So within that, I think also Parliament appropriates the money that the UPDF uses. So because of that, I think at some point, government has to come back and maybe give the status of the troops as a deployment, source of income, because such contingencies occur, and maybe they may need more money to be appropriated by Parliament, either retrogressively or in the next financial year. So to me, I think the tactical things may not be made public, but at a certain point, I think we have to be accountable to Parliament.
According to Article 124 of the Constitution, the President may, with the approval of Parliament, given by resolution supported by not less than 2/3 of members present, declare a state of war exists between Uganda and any other country. Then another one, where it is impracticable to seek approval of Parliament before declaration of a state of war, the President may declare a state of war without the approval of Parliament, but shall seek the same after declaration. In any case, not less than 72 hours after that declaration. That is the Constitution. I don't know, I didn't quote it verbatim, but do you think we have...
But in this case, does the law say, because what you're reading says declare a war on another state?
Okay.
No, I mean what you have read.
Yes, yeah.
Another state.
You declare
a war.
Because we are at war.
Yes, we are at war.
I don't know.
But we are not at war with another state.
Yes.
We are at war with rebels who seek to destabilize the government of Uganda.
So that is why you said it is a peace enforcement, not a war.
No, it is a war. In the course of enforcing peace, you fight a war.
Then would it require the President to declare this state of war as per the Constitution?
Yes, the President will declare, but to me, according to the interpretation, within the 21 hours, within the 21 days, is still okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
if I'm to take the UPDF Act.
Oh, so you seem not to agree with Honorable Meded Seguna that some laws have been flouted and the Constitution has been undermined. This deployment. When
these laws are being made, some they are supposed to be adhered to, and that is the principle that we shall hold. But now, where you have two laws that seem to kind of contradict each other, to contradict each other a bit, maybe it will seek, so at some point someone can go for a constitutional interpretation of the same laws. But whereas the army is quoting the UPDF Act, others are quoting the Constitution, but the two are supposed to work together. And sometimes we have to look at the circumstances. Yes, if we use the UPDF Act and came to ratify this within 21 days, for me, I think it is still okay. Because sometimes these are emergencies that require response. For instance, when bombs hit us, we were not prepared. And the threat, maybe you never know, the enemy could have got information of change, maybe in a context, and therefore they have to act. Yes.
So, Honorable Seguna talks about striking a balance. When we need to move in swiftly, we do not need to alert the enemy that we are coming. He proposes that maybe we can deploy, but before we fire the first shot, then we okay, the leadership of army should notify parliament. But that is not approval. At first he talked about approval of parliament, and here the constitution from the provision I read here, it talks about approval.
Actually the law talks about approval.
Now, how do you see it practical to strike that balance?
That's why I think when you raise the issue of amending the law, sometimes there's what we call a reasonable time. Reasonable time. Okay. I have always seen, I like benchmarking sometimes. You can see the Americans, the commander-in-chief, as maybe said, fire and use drones, hit so and so bases in Afghanistan. Then after 2-3 days, they have informed the Senate. But usually you also hear, at times also you find the Senate also coming up to demand, especially depending on the circumstances. The government may not be able to issue a statement immediately. Sometimes they are looking at the casualties, maybe the collateral damage, gather that information before they give the complete information to the Senate. So you suggested maybe amendment of the law. There is what we call a reasonable time. If honestly 72 hours sometimes can be impractical. Can be impractical. Maybe we could say a week, 2 weeks, but maybe the framers of the law thought, of the constitution, thought that if you have a mad president, may abuse the process.
I don't know. You referred to the way the U.S. government and the administration in the U.S. does its work. I don't know if the air strikes that were conducted in Kabul, Biden first sought approval of the Senate or what, I don't know, and that's why I was saying that maybe it is time we look at our laws and we make amendments.
With the US, when they are going for
when they are going
a new
Iraq,
mission,
when we are going to Iraq, they had to seek.
Yes, when they are going for a new mission in another country, they seek the approval of the Senate.
But for Afghanistan, they had already withdrawn.
Now for the African, they had
concluded.
They had declared concluded, but there were still risks. You remember, ISIS Kabul had bombed the airport and killed some people.
When they were
so it was a kind of retaliation from the US to ensure that maybe neutralize the enemy from the source. And I think this is a strategy that our government is trying to do. That instead, rather than wait for them to come and cause havoc, let's take the war to them and maybe weaken them from there. So, but usually there are circumstances where you launch, then
you report.
Exactly. But in those cases, Afghanistan, Iraq at that time, US was going to war with other countries. So that is different.
It is different. Well, I think let's go back to the questions that have been arising on whether this time our army and its leadership will not commit mistakes they committed in 2002, 1998, resulting into the 2005 International Court of Justice ruling that inflicted a fine of $10 billion on Uganda. Are you optimistic this time around they have learned from their mistakes and they will not commit such a crimes again?
Mr. Tusime, unless they come back and we don't see those reports, and maybe this time there is closer collaboration with the Congolese government and the Congolese forces. Actually, I was watching some of the news on Al Jazeera and seeing the commanders together. They have been talking. This morning I was watching an interview of General Muhanga, I think who is leading the operation, and he's saying they are talking at a strategic level and also at an operational level. So probably this time those temptations may be low, because if we look back at that time, there were a number of forces in Congo. We had Zimbabwe there, we had Angola there, we had Chad there, we had Uganda there, we had Rwanda there, and then we had the Uganda-backed rebel groups like Congolese Rally for Democracy. We also had the Rwandese-backed splitter group, and the other ones on the Congolese side. So each person had their own territory, where even they instituted mining and so forth. So it was actually warlordism. And that time we were hostile to the Congolese government. Now, thanks to the diplomacy between President Museveni and President Tshisekedi, exactly, there has been engagement. I saw the Council of Ministers approving Congo to join the East African community. I saw the Congolese ambassador 2 days ago inspecting something in Namave, where machines that are going to construct roads in Congo are being kept, I think by a company called Dot Services. So you see that there is strong collaboration between the two states, and therefore when there is coordination, collaboration and transparency, the likelihood of stealing reduces. But of course it is unfortunate that the reparations are still on our neck. The $10 billion for a small economy like this is too big. What I don't know is when shall we pay it, but we have been having negotiations to and fro with the Congolese through mediation of the International Court of Justice. So let's wait and see. But I cannot say no or yes.
The temptations are real. They are still there.
Yeah, they can be there. Congo is rich. And you know, the human heart is weak, especially where resources are involved. We have seen here, I've been watching Honorable Peter Ogwang visiting places like Maina Misindwa district. Someone is given even money for a borehole in a community where he lives and there is no clean water, steals the entire money just because he stays in Imbale where he has tapped water, but he doesn't wish his own people clean water. So that's where resources are involved. People can manifest any kind of behavior.
And again, Doctor, talking about the temptations, they say the first casualty in war is truth.
Yes. Actually, that is very right.
And there is another likelihood. I don't know. I don't want to be, but there is another possibility that even the commanders themselves can agree that let's do this and don't. Of course, looking at your point of, I mean at the matter you raised, that now that we are in close collaboration with the Congolese army, then that would limit our appetite.
Yes, but I can assure you that even in Congo there is almost a permanent UN mission, MONUSCO. It started in 1999. Up to now they are still peacekeeping, but they are staying there while rebels are marauding wherever. Congolese rebels and ADF and others, and they have been accused by the International Crisis Group of themselves stealing.
Exactly.
So, and these are troops from Indonesia, where South Africa, from different Malaysia. So the likelihood of stealing, the temptation is there, but we need to be clear from the beginning. One thing I must thank the UPDF. We had operation was it Operation Lightning Thunder?
Commanded by General Muhoozi,
Yes.
Lightning Thunder.
Yes.
In Garamba.
In Garamba, which chased Konya out of Garamba forest. I can assure you, because I know some commanders who were there and they came back. The troops were very disciplined. They did not steal anything until they were demobilized and brought back after dismantling the LRA bases. So I will give them a benefit of doubt that maybe things changed.
All right, viewers, this is Soul TV. The program is The Dialogue. We are discussing a matter of deployment, a UPDF deployment in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we are also playing a devil's advocate, looking at what possibly can go wrong, considering what happened between 1998 and 2002, resulting into that huge fine of $10 billion that Uganda should pay to Congo for plundering, alleged plunder, but it's not a allegation. The court decided, ruled. And I remember when they were returning,
yes,
the UPDF, others, like we said, managed to come back with
Wives.
gold and what, but the others who came with wives. I think I think it's better. It's better we pay them. They come with wives. They bring Congolese women, not gold. And
I think one of the biggest crises we caused was bringing wives, because
is it a crisis bringing wives?
So many soldiers left here when they had their wives and girlfriends. But when they went, they came back with the Congolese women. And when they arrived in Bombo, they were not compatible. The women left and started doing prostitution within Bombo. And so, yeah, most of them did not keep the Congolese wives. So beside, and yet we were being accused in the International Court of Justice of people trafficking. But at least we defended ourselves successfully that these were wives of they married them. So we need to take care of that. If we go, let's
even encourage them to bring Congolese women.
If the mission is to destroy the enemy and the enemy bases, let's do that and let them come back to their wives. You know, sometimes everything in you looks good, but over time you find it's different.
Well, we need to conclude on this matter, though. We need again to come up with another because
but one thing, just 1 minute on this.
There are those issues, underlying issues you should raise.
There's just this one thing I wanted to raise. If you trace the Congo conflict from around 1994, there are so many parties that were involved, and this gave birth to the International Conference on the Great Lakes region. It has a number of members: Central African Republic, Chad, and then the Chad, the Congo itself. So there are a number of countries, and then there are those co-opted members. I know we are there to solve our problem, not to end totally Congolese problem. But I think largely it also deals to do with the Congolese greater problem, which needs the involvement of all parties, Angola and so forth. So I think it's the high time we revealed that engagement, because when that engagement came up, it led to the Angola peace agreement for Congo. And by then, at least the tension somehow went down. So even as we do this, you know, every operation has an objective. So the objective could be dismantle, destroy, and weaken their capacity to cause havoc in Uganda and in the region. But thereafter, we need to invest more in sustainable peace.
Because if you learn that there are very many armed militia groups operating just near our border in
exactly
Congo. It's another issue of concern.
Yes, Rwanda here.
Not only ADF is actually a security threat.
Yes.
To Uganda, another one, you can dismantle ADF, then another one
emerges. Exactly.
And actually, even those armed militia groups can be used. It can be used to destabilize.
There are groups there, the M23, the Congolese Alliance for Democracy. They are within the North Kivu and Ituri, same area.
So you're saying the issue of insecurity should be there should be a comprehensive strategy to end insecurity in that whole part of Congo.
Exactly. Because first, the area is very vast. It is forested with rivers. Sometimes even the terrain is very hard. For instance, when we went to fight the LRA in Garamba, one of the biggest obstacles to the UPDF was not the rebels. They had weakened. It was the terrain and the forests.
Last evening, we received a report from UPDF, and they were saying they have not actually accessed the camps they bombed. Just because they cannot access, the accessibility is really hard.
Very hard.
Now they are even planning. They are now deploying graders. They are deploying graders
to open up
access roads that will take the army to the camps they bombed.
Exactly.
It's really
that was actually the biggest challenge is the terrain. Then malaria also became a problem to the soldiers. Disease because mosquitoes and so breed within the rainforests. So the region needs a comprehensive strategy to solve the Congo problem, because Congo is vast, forested, and the Congolese government has no capacity to maintain stability in the whole government. You see that the other side of Kinshasa to the Atlantic is okay, and they are going up, the business is booming and everything. Now the eastern our side of Congo is sick, and yet it's so big.
Couldn't it be one of those factors behind their decision to join the East African community?
Yes, actually, I'm one of those who have been thinking that hurried admission of members to the East African community is not solving the problem, because it was also admitting more problems. If you bring South Sudan, it's chaotic. You bring maybe consider Somalia, and it's still chaotic. Then you bring Congo, it's still chaotic. I would encourage that bilateral arrangements or multilateral arrangements would be the best, because the EAC itself has not shown ability to solve even a South Sudan problem.
Even Rwanda, Uganda.
Yes, the borders are always a point. But one president got angry, closed the borders now 2 years. And the East African community itself has failed to solve that problem. In South Sudan here, Salva Kiir, Dr. Riek Machar, and others, there are so many groups. We have the role of EAC is very minimal, East African community. So I think sometimes multilateral, bilateral arrangements between agreeing parties can be better. And maybe when a state achieves a certain level, but the issue of constructing roads in the DRC, I really support it. Because ever since when our market in South Sudan collapsed, Congo, we are trading with them, but one of the obstacles is infrastructure.
Yeah, true.
So if we are to open up Eastern Congo, then Ugandans can do cross-border trade and will impact our economy.
Then I don't know if you can, if you can also give your opinion on this fear. There are fears that are rising that what happened, the Kisangani 1 and Kisangani 2 would happen again. We could see another episode of Kisangani 1 and Kisangani 2, considering the fact that even Rwanda is there. Rwanda actually went there before went there. From the sources that Rwanda is already there.
Actually, Rwanda has been almost permanently in South Kivu province, and partly because of the remnants of the Interahamwe. In fact, sometimes Rwanda uses proxies to fight the Interahamwe in Congo who are there. And that's why it came to my point that maybe as we attack, we also intensify at diplomatic level, because that Congo has so many stakeholders, I could call them. There's Rwanda, Uganda, rebel groups within, external rebel groups, neighboring countries that were part of the war like Angola, Zimbabwe, Chad, and so many others. So probably if we intensify pressure under the Great Lakes Peace Initiative, international conference on the Great Lakes region, it would be much better for sustainable peace. That's why I told you that the operation, sometimes the objectives of the operation are short term or medium term, but for sustainability there must be peace building initiatives to achieve sustainable peace.
You see it, do you see it working that way? Do you see it happening?
Yeah, if we were able to see it, we were able to see it in the early 2000s, late 90s, and partly I've seen like the border closure. Mr. Museveni and Mr. Kagame have met in Angola under the same arrangement, although we have not yet seen the result. But for Congo, I believe all those actors are an issue, because the UN has showed serious incapacity to handle the Congolese problem. And peacekeeping initiatives should not be permanent. If UN brought troops honestly in 1999, this is 2020, and everybody is just roaming, and yet they even changed their mandate to peace enforcement from peacekeeping. So it means they lack capacity. But in this case, maybe the UN can convene under the Great Lakes initiate, and then we handle that thing collectively ourselves.
Well, and our viewers, this is the dialogue. My name is Simapolo, and we have Dr. Gerard Wanzala Werike looking at the recent deployment of UPDF in the Democratic Republic of Congo to flush out the ADF rebels and probably bring the issue of ADF to an end. I don't know if you're optimistic that like we did with Konyi and LRA, we can bring this to an end.
There was a time the LRA,
all those factors we talked about, the terrain, the wealth, because it's also a factor, I think, that when these people, these armed groups, while they are in that rich mineral region, they are using the natural wealth to acquire weapons and sustain the rebellions.
Exactly. There was a time the LRA, in order to stay strong, because the LRA, if you read its background, I'm just giving it as an example, started as a local rebel group within northern Uganda. Later, when it was pushed into South Sudan, they still continued mobilizing even around the region. There's a time this Mugisu of mine, who Mazanga, Mazanga was a spokesperson of the LRA based in Nairobi. But later on, when they were declared a terrorist force, they changed the strategy and started allying with Islamic groups, jihadist groups, in order to curb the flow of money and so forth. Now, I was also reading the International Crisis Group saying that the ADF had actually tried to renounce their name and now rename themselves the ISIS, meaning that there is a dimension of international collaborations now for financial resources, networking, and so forth. So when a force changes with that kind of operation, it requires to be handled at both local, regional, and global level, because you must track the movement of the money, movement of individuals across regions. And like, there was a time they were really hit, and the man who is in prison, the former head of ADF, Mukuru, had to hide in Tanzania under different names. But our intelligence working with Tanzania were able to grab him and bring him here. So that collaboration is very key, because it means these groups could be affiliated, those disturbing Kenya. You have seen Kenya, before the bomb throwing came to Uganda, there were a number of tensions in Kenya where some people were arrested with bombs and so forth and imprisoned. So there is, I think, a coordinated. Then you are hearing of Mozambique, a group affiliated in Mozambique. Exactly. So I think that collaboration is very important. If they have bases with military hardware where they do trade from and they are dismantled, then the process must involve everybody, regional governments.
You talked about the issue of the ISIS, the Islamic State, and
Yes.
Of course we saw reports of IC claiming responsibility for the attacks here in Kampala.
Yes.
And I think that's why probably this could be a bigger war bigger than we anticipated in the beginning.
And actually it is good. The government has not underestimated it. And the president, the UPDF have been very clear that there is a coordinated move. And when you read international groups that track the crisis, they can confirm that there is a collaboration. Security, the police.
Even in Mozambique, Islamic
yes,
State is behind.
Yeah, that is very true. And I think the coordination was Congo. They call themselves the Islamic State of Central Africa. So it is a compliment. They have not underestimated it. But I told you that collaboration is important. I saw the police here saying that they have tracked even some business people who are using their businesses, I think in fuel, although they did not name, to bring illicit money for these purposes. So there should be a collaboration anti-money laundering, because it breeds that people can get involved because of money. Then it involves shifting bases and cross-border movements. So if the objective of this first operation is dismantle, weaken, maybe even kill some of the leadership, then the next phase is working together to contain the expansion, and also to track other networks, monetary and so forth. Say that, and then of course sustainable peace efforts like pacification. The reason they go and hide in the Congo is because they feel it is safe. Congo. Yes.
Is there? Do you see a possibility of other forces, other people who have interest, our enemies who have interest, joining forces with the ADF? I mean, looking at its image and its way of doing things, being now a terrorist, more of a terrorist group, is there a possibility that our enemy, I don't know, our enemy can jump onto that war and make it actually bigger than we thought?
But one thing I know is that the ADF is already our enemy. Maybe an increase in enemies. Because the ADF is an enemy. That's why the government is fighting the ADF. But also where such a group causes, you know, in war there is what they call morale, you know, psychological morale boosting. If they can do a number of actions and they succeed, definitely it can embolden other groups and they think they can do the same to undermine the security of the state. So but swift movement for me now is a positive step. And also strengthen relations with the DRC under President Tshisekedi is another step which we actually must applaud. Because regional diplomatic efforts are very important in fighting this cross-border conflict.
Okay. Well, as we wind up, let's come back and look at what we're doing at home.
Yes.
As far as security is concerned, and particularly fighting the recent incidents of ADF. I think 2 days ago, then another statement from police was released indicating that another accomplice, another suspected ADF accomplice was arrested in Wakiso. And he's the one who was the mastermind, actually one who was building, putting together these jackets, suicide jackets and all that. And this is not one in isolation. We have seen security now, I mean, coming out with those and looks to be elaborate reports and tactical operations that have yielded. I don't know if it demonstrates capacity, it demonstrates precision. I don't know how you look at that.
Yeah, I think history has shown that when our troops are given the support, the resources, to move, to strengthen their intelligence capacity, they can actually achieve results. It's not the first time that Uganda has faced bombs. You remember around 1999, 2000, there were bombs here. But security intensified, worked, and defeated them. So I believe that there is capacity. They can do it if they mean.
You remind me of the president's statement, the head of state. Made a statement, I think, this week, that my people could be in slumber. But once you arouse them, you provoke them, they wake up and do good work.
Yes.
I think that's what you're saying, that we have capacity. We seem to have capacity.
It is just that at times our intention shifts. For instance, we have been in electoral period. Actually, politics in Uganda, serious politics, political confrontations must have started around 2017. starting with the Arua, and then the events that followed, the trials in the court martial. Since then, I think the attention of the security shifted to the politics, containing the candidates who wanted to mobilize either before time, before the whistle blows, or violating COVID-19 SOPs. So I think the attention of our security shifted.
And the enemy exploited the gap.
Yes, the enemy could have exploited the gap. But right now, the president seems to clearly say, like I saw him on TV, that our enemy, these FDC people here, these noob people here, they are not the problem. But this, they are doing politics. But these other ones here, so I think now the attention of the security has shifted.
And you hope it is upping the game.
Yes.
From what we see now.
Absolutely. Now there is increased surveillance. That's why, I mean, people are being arrested. There is increased surveillance. I like what I'm seeing. I know there is inconveniences here and there, but it's necessary. When you are in a situation like this, it is necessary to be inconvenienced. Security checks, if you enter buildings, how we park cars on the streets of Kampala and so forth. It is important.
But is it serious as you would think after those train bombings in Kampala? Because you go downtown, you'll see people carrying luggages and entering premises without that much attention. I don't know. After the train bombings, we should see.
This also goes to our leadership, both elected local leadership within, say, Kampala and the police. Because honestly, if during elections we were able to summon the landlords in Kampala in these high buildings and put troops on top, the rooftops, you know, how can we fail to have security checks within the shopping malls? With all the rent that the people pay to the landlords, how can just they fail to employ people to screen people who are entering? I think there is total lack of seriousness. If they don't, threaten with closure, they will lose the income. So then they will know that security is a responsibility of everyone.
Finally, it looks like all these operations are intelligence-led. Security opted for intelligence-led operations.
Definitely, because
not employing these disruptive measures of closing roads. I mean, employing sharpshooters.
Those ones cannot fight this kind of enemy.
Looks like it is, and like the president said, this is an urban. This is urban terrorism.
Because the operations,
intelligence-led.
The operations of terrorists are very discreet, very secretive, covert. So it involves movement of people, money, dangerous weapons. It is very discreet. So for you, I think to defeat it must be intelligence-led, because you must track the relations, how they relate, how they move, how do they finance. Those are purely intelligence-led operations. It's not that like maybe you're going to stop a procession, or it is a conventional war, you know the enemy is here, and then you take the tankers, like you saw us pounding in the DRC. That firepower was too much.
It was immense.
Yes.
Now, as we wind up again, let's look at the long-term solution. Some of the pundits were saying that we should also look at how we can empower our young people who are being enticed by these terrorists being recruited. I was amazed to look at the list of people who are being recruited in Karugutu. I think that is part of Western Uganda.
Kabarole, I think.
Kabarole. And you could see even a 7-year-old, 9-year-old, the majority were in 14, 15, 16 there. And they are saying probably we should step up ways of engaging them, employing them, and with this big population of young people, I don't know how that how that can work.
Yeah, true, deprivation can breed a lot of problems. And right now, if you look at Uganda, the population of young people is such huge, very huge. If you look at the Uganda Bureau of Statistics, the population is very huge. When you look at the unemployment levels, very big. So many people have no work to do, and now the situation has been made worse with COVID. People who were probably bouncers at nightclubs, at bars, are no longer working. Those who used to roast chicken around bar places, we used to have this night, they call it the night economy. Those who vend different kind of things are not there. So vulnerable populations can breed violence.
Yeah, true.
And that is why people call China a dictatorship, because in China not everybody votes. Only the people who belong to the party vote. Members, not everybody. But one thing I used to see what the Chinese leaders say is that the sustainability of the peace they have within China has to be managed through the economics. Even when you go to Xinjiang province in the northwest, where the Muslims are, and there was a lot of tension, they have tried to combine both force and empowering the communities by opening up, ensure they will trade more with the neighboring countries, and also invest in the one belt initiative, so that they can tap into what is happening. So the issues of economics are very, very important. Maybe we need to evaluate our interventions working, because the government of Uganda has brought up a number of interventions. Honorable Segona talked of Entandikwa, but I will talk about the more recent, the Women's Entrepreneur Fund. It's there. The youth livelihood, but the problem has always been abuse.
Yes,
you find youth groups are complaining.
Very many women groups in Wakiso who were frustrated by this Entandikwa women empowerment group, leadership of the web.
Yes, one time I went to Karungu district, I visited Karungu, I found so many people with the borders from different parts of Karungu district to come and listen to Emyoga. They were teaching them about Emyoga, but the complaints were too many, that Emyoga funds are very hard to access by so many categories. But also, maybe as a government, we need to do a comprehensive evaluation of Entandikwa, Prosperity for All, Operation Wealth Creation, all these, why are they not working?
Okay. Without proper execution of such programs,
still you'll spend a lot of money.
It will be.
You spend a lot of money.
Ready ground for
exactly. You spend a lot of money. The results are not seen, and then so many people keep on leaving the rural places, coming to converge in Kampala. Look, Kampala, we are just less than 3 million people, but very congested. I was looking at our statistics that in 2050, Uganda is going to have 100 million people. Now, if we don't invest in this population, this Sigiri economy, at night you see everybody is selling chapata, Rolex and so forth. And then at night, the boys are at large. I liked the way Govi, the new Secretary to the Treasury, presented it, that you can be rich, but if the poor are very many, you will not sleep.
You can't.
You will build a chikomera, big fence, you will add electricity, barbed wires on top, even dogs inside. But when you hear anything, maybe they have arrived. So we need to think about that.
We need to think about that. Our time is running out, and finally, the religious connotations that have been coming up, sentiments coming up around terrorism. You need to make a comment, though that is another sensitive matter.
Yeah, issues of religion are very sensitive, and to be honest, with due respect to our Muslim friends, some of us have relatives who are Muslims, although we are Christians. I remember a family like of Dr. Milton Obote. He was Anglican. I remember his brother Adoko Nekyon converted to Islam, but they were all living as a family. So I don't believe Islam. I've read a bit of Islam, but it is a religion of peace.
Yeah, true.
It's a religion of peace. So we shouldn't. There are people, Christians actually, if I'm to listen to the police and the names they read, you find someone who was Christian has changed the name, trying to show that he's a Muslim, okay, in order to get involved and maybe get money. But in actual sense, the person does not believe in any principles of Islam. So I think it's not about religion, it's about people who want to use religion to cause havoc. And then you find the Muslim innocent people, maybe sometimes maybe even the stigma can become, hey, at home I have my tunic, Arabic wear with the cape, but one of the 2 weeks ago I wore it with the cape, and then everybody was saying, now if you want quick death, you throw a cavera there, and then the border people will leech you.
That's very sad.
So it is very sad. It causes a lot of stigma. I had to go home and change the cloth. So I don't want to believe that Islam is the problem. Islam and Christianity were born together.
then you seem to say it is true. Some people could be using those pseudonyms, Islamic pseudonyms, for their own interests and tarnishing the image of Islam,
the religion.
Yes.
Also, some people find it easier to mobilize around the religion or tribe. What President Museveni calls identity issues, the politics of identity, things like that. Some people, actually, I call them narrow-minded. Like if they want a cause, instead of mobilizing around the ideas, they look for the soft targets, tribe.
Okay.
They look at religion because they can easily brainwash people.
Doctor, one statement, one final statement, and we go.
I think as citizens of Uganda, let's give our government a benefit of doubt that the responsibility to safeguard our borders, our security is with the state. Although the constitution says that all the power emanates from the people, so they do it on our behalf. But if they are doing it on our behalf, let's give the support. And also on the side of the government, we also need accountability to ensure that resources are not wasted and people feel they are respected by their own government.
Thank you so much, our viewers. The program Dialogue is coming to a close. We'll be going and returning next week. My name is Tsemapolo, and my guest, Dr. Werihe Wanzala, is the head of civic engagement and research at Africa Leadership Institute. And before we had Honorable Medad Rubega Segona, the Member of Parliament for Wisiro East, and he's the chairperson for the Parliamentary Accounts Committee. We thank you so much, our guests, and we thank you so much, our viewers, for giving us your time. And we hope the discussion brought out some key issues that will help build our country. My name is Simapolo. I must say a good afternoon